So box, 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 box.
Hi, my name is Rochelle, and you're watching or listening to BoxBox F1 Pod. Today, we are talking all about the Mexico Grand Prix and what a race it was. There was like a whole segment at the beginning where like they basically made like a TikTok edit of Max and Lando's rivalry, but they like set it to like lucha libre scenes. And when I was watching it on Sky, at first I was like, what is this edit? Who did this? But then the race started and the entire race was basically, it was pretty spot on about what was happening. Not just between Max and Lando, when that was like the number one situation, but there was a lot of like fighting and there was some fun racing. And then there was just people being mad at each other. Like people were just annoyed and mad. So we're going to discuss all of it. And we're also going to discuss the very emotional and exciting win, Carlos. But before we get into that, I just wanted to quickly talk about what I'm going to be making while we do this. So I'm going to be making something called pozole verde. Please excuse that embarrassing attempt at pronunciation, which is basically like this like Mexican soup stew situation. And I think the one that's actually native to the Mexico City region is the pozole rojo. But that's traditionally made with pork, and I don't eat pork. So I decided to make a pozole verde, which is like with a green salsa type thing. So it's with tomatillos and green peppers and everything. And it's made with chicken. So that's what I'm going to be making. I actually had to do a lot of prep to begin with. So my chicken soup is a boiling, and I roasted all the stuff for the verde sauce that I'm gonna blend while we chat. So I'm gonna be making the salsa verde, I guess it's salsa, and then I'm gonna be cooking it on the stovetop, shredding the chicken, and all putting it all together. So that's what I'm going to be doing while we chat. And as usual, let's kick things off with the digital warm-up. Okay, so lap one, F1 news. The Max and Lando incident from last week is still sort of a hot topic for everyone. And it seems like the FIA has said that they will be changing racing guideline wording after that incident because it did cause a lot of drama. And it's just been Max taking advantage of the FIA's of basically the rules. And so like you can't actually fault him for it, but everyone is faulting him anyway because I think he's following the rules but on the limit, and he's just basically using a loophole. And Charles was actually asked about it, and it's really funny. People keep replaying this interview clip because when he starts talking about it, he accidentally says "my Max." And it's very cute. But Charles is basically, the whole interview is just him being like, we all know how Max races. We always know he drives on the limit. And so like, we shouldn't be surprised. He's one of the best racers in the world. Sometimes he passes the limit. I don't think anyone thought he necessarily passed the limit except for maybe McLaren last week, but he was certainly on the cusp of it. And so again, everyone's been pressuring the FIA to make a decision about the change. And depending on who's been the most impacted by Max doing this is complaining the loudest. All right, update on the swearing thing, which is still a thing, by the way. George has said that they will be addressing it, probably the Mexico Grand Prix. I don't know if they actually did. I think a lot of the discussions with the FIA has been postponed to later races. I'm not entirely sure why they're not addressing these things now, but they're not. But what was hilarious is the article that I was reading about this, it referred to George's statement about this by calling him the director of the Grand Prix Drivers Association. And I looked it up and he actually is the director of the Drivers Grand Prix Association. And I don't know if this was like common information that somehow just eluded me, but I thought it was so funny because there's always like those jokes about George being in charge of the group chat and like him being responsible for kicking people out when they get fired and like all of this stuff. And then it turns out that that's actually his job, which I find hilarious. And it's just so him. Like he's basically the head mom of the PTA and it's just so perfect. So yeah, we're still TBD on the swearing and it's just poor Max. Like everyone keeps saying the FIA favors him, but I don't think the FIA favors him. I think they're like, he annoys them and they annoy him. And it's just a mutual level of annoyance. Also, there have been rumors that Oscar might be leaving McLaren, fueled by Helmut Marko. To which Oscar, when he was asked about it, he's like, I'm perfectly happy where I am, and it wouldn't be a week in F1 without comments from Helmut. Whoa, I don't know what just came out of my mouth. Comments from Helmut. And that made me laugh because it's true. It isn't a week in F1 without comments from Helmut Marko. And I just love when Oscar gets sassy. He was actually having quite a sassy weekend. Anyway, so lap 2, off-duty F1. So this is sort of related to last week, but someone put like a side-by-side of Mondo Duplantis, the Olympics the Olympic athlete, and George Russell, and was like, spot the difference, because they literally look so similar. And interestingly enough, the biggest difference between them is Mondo's neck is bigger than George's. Like, his neck is F1ing more than George's. And I think that's fascinating and highly impressive. To have a neck girthier than an F1 driver is quite the feat. Speaking of doppelgangers, I don't know if anyone saw this, but there was a Timothée Chalamet lookalike contest in New York, and the prize was $50. And it was like all of these just like skinny, lanky, dark-haired, curly little white boys. And they were all competing for being the most Timothée Chalamet looking. And then Timmy Chalamet came to the lookalike contest, and I thought that was incredible. 10 out of 10 banter. Anyway, another thing, I don't remember if I talked about this last week. I think I did, but Red Bull did a video where they had everyone like reenact the scene, the famous clip between Max and Charles, where the incident scene, and it featured Max, but it also featured Charles at the end. And then this week they had Max react to the reenactment, and it was so cute. He was smiling the whole time. Then when Charles came onto the screen, he started smiling even more. And they asked him if he remembers that time. He's like, I remember it like it was yesterday. And he just, Verstappen? He just loves him so much. Also, between this race and the last race, Charles released a clip where he it was basically him learning how to fly a fighter jet just out of nowhere. And his name on the radio, whatever it's called, his call name or whatever they say, was Percival. And I just love that. And it's just so funny to me that this is what he does in his free time. He has so many random talents and interests. And I'm sure it killed his mother to see him trying yet another absolutely insane hobby. Stick to piano, it's safe, you can't die, it's good for everyone. So Alex is continuing the Williams podcast thing with whoever ends up being his teammate, I guess. So he's doing it with Franco. And it's really nice. I really like getting to know Franco that way and also seeing Alex interact with him. But it's been like a thing where Franco a couple of weeks ago told Alex about mate, which is like this drink from Argentina. I remember my parents were there last year and they talked about it a lot and how it was like an interesting drink. It's an acquired taste, I think. And so everyone was asking Franco to try to get Alex to try mate. And so he made it in front of him. And it's so funny how particular Franco is about how mate is drunk. Like, he mixed it in a cup and put a straw in, and Alex tried to mix it. And he's like, do not touch, just drink. And then he was saying that mate is really good for like a detox. It like cleans you out. And Alex is like, which direction does it clean you out? And Franco's like, both ways. It cleans you out both ways. I love Franco. I also don't remember if I talked about this last week, but there was a clip where Alex Albon was asked about like TikTok trends and if he knew what they meant. And he knew almost every single one of them, or TikTok terminology, not just trends. And he also mentioned in that clip that Lily tells him all the time that he gives her the ick, and that just like iconic from Lily. I love Lily so much. She's the best wag. I love all the wags. She's the best. But back to Franco. They did like, the fan stage thing, and it was the McLaren drivers and the Williams drivers. And Oscar said on stage that he really wants to learn Spanish, and then turned to Franco and he's like, because apparently you're like really funny in your interviews in Spanish. And Franco literally blushed on stage. Like, you could see his cheeks turn red, and he got so shy. It was so cute. All right. In other interviews that happened, Lawson, they basically did like a get to know Liam Lawson thing. And it was conducted by F1. And so they were asking him like all these like would you rather questions. And the first of all, all the answers were slightly unhinged, but my standout responses from him were: one, would you rather win the Monaco Grand Prix or be a voice actor in the next Cars? And he really sat there for like a minute and was like really struggling to answer that question, which I found hilarious. The other question that he gave such an unhinged answer to was, would you rather have an extra arm or an extra leg? And he goes, already got one of those. And then he goes, we probably can't use that, right? We probably can't. And then they left it in, which I found absolutely hilarious. And it reminded me of the tripod clip from Pierre Gasly. Looks like he's got a strong competitor in the tripod area. I sort of love Liam. One of the comments was like, he seems a bit cocky to me based on this clip. And someone commented, an F1 driver? Cocky? No. I think Liam, first of all, yes, cocky, but also, yes, F1 driver, duh. But I just found it so funny, and I don't know. I think he's fun. I think he's super fun. He was insane on the track today, but I think he's a fun guy to have around now. And the way he's been performing, both him and Franco, to be honest, he's sticking around for a while. He's gonna keep either the RB seat, or he's gonna get the Red Bull seat, or something's gonna happen, but... And then Charles and Carlos played chess on their way home from the US Grand Prix. And they posted a video of it on, it was like a VistaJet thing. But, and it was so wholesome. I love when they play chess together. I think it's like my favorite thing about them. The other thing about that clip is that it was Charles and Carlos singing See You Again by Wiz Khalifa and Charlie Puth in the video. And everyone was freaking out because apparently there's a really famous edit on TikTok of Charles and Carlos that is set to that song, so that everyone's like, oh my God, they've seen it. They've seen the edit, which I find hilarious if they have. I really am going to miss them a lot together. It's just really, truly not going to be the same next year. All right, moving on. Lap 4 trackside in Mexico City. So Alex, Charles Leclerc's girlfriend, posted a screenshot of her conversation with Rebecca, Carlos's girlfriend, comparing outfits. And Rebecca was like, I'm wearing blah, blah, blah. I assume you're wearing a dress, and we're dressed for entirely different seasons. And Alex replies, yeah, of course. And then sends a picture of her in like this summery white dress. And then Rebecca sends a picture of herself in like pants and like this like woolen poncho, and it was quite funny how differently they were dressed, but also both perfect. I actually think they get along quite well, like in exactly the way you should get along, like not necessarily best friends, but also like just like really friendly and like each other, which is also going to be sad next year. Who's Alex going to hang out with? Also, Brad Pitt is still filming his movie. It's still not over. And I saw a clip of him winning the Mexico Grand Prix. So we're all super excited to know how the movie's gonna end, or what the climax of the film is, him winning the Mexico Grand Prix, because he was like running around the track waving the Mexico flag and everyone was cheering for him. First of all, this movie must be so expensive to edit correctly, but also I feel like they're saving so much money just using the real F1 season with fans and everything. Like they really, it's smart and it's easy, you know? Not that they like invented the wheel on that, but you know what I mean. Charles arrived to track in a full mariachi fit. That was like it was like a really cool mariachi fit. It was like black and gray and silver, and it fitted him perfectly. And he arrived with a full mariachi band as well. 10 out of 10. He looked great. Also, Ollie Bierman, who's now basically a part-time F1 TV commentator, was talking to Laura and like the whole team. And Laura was like, are you feeling the repercussions of the altitude change? And at first, Ollie was like, oh yeah, I have like a slight headache. And then Laura was like, yeah, we all got winded like walking up the stairs. And Ollie goes, well, I'm an athlete, so I actually didn't get winded at all. And it's basically just like the new version of I'm a high performance athlete. Da, da, da. Sweat, baby. I thought it was really funny. Also, he's just so sassy. Every clip he does with them is so funny. During the grid walk, which Brundle didn't do, not entirely sure why, because he did comment on the race. Karun was talked to this Argentinian rapper whose name I'm so sorry I didn't catch. And he was asked what it's like in Argentina when it comes to Franco. And he was like, oh, Franco is #1 Argentina. He's like our #1 thing. Everyone loves him. And Karun goes, oh, like bigger than Messi? And the rapper looks at him like he's grown like 8 heads. He's like, well, no, not bigger than Messi. Messi is Messi. But Franco's basically second. I thought that was funny that Franco has now become the #2 export from Argentina. There also have been rumors about Franco moving to the Red Bull family, which he has said, he was asked about it and he basically was like, I literally, at this point in time, I have no seat next year on any team. I am jobless. This is my one and only chance at F1 at this point. I do not know where those rumors came from or what anyone is talking about. Either that's true. He said it with a lot of like chutzpah, like he really meant it. So maybe that's true. But also, who knows if that's true? He could just be really good at lying, which I would fully believe. All right. So with that, quite quick, since we were like in a triple header situation, with that, we conclude the digital warm-up. There is not going to be a race rhyme today. I'm so sorry. I just didn't have it in me. Although it would have been a fun race rhyme to do this week. So we're going to head straight into analysis, but I'm first going to switch sides so we can start prepping the rest of this. BRB. All right, on to analysis. Let's hit things off with quali. So James Hinchcliffe, which if you've been here for a while, he's that Canadian driver who every time I cannot remember for the life of me what his name is. So basically last week in Austin, he did like a segment where he learned one of the cheers with the Dallas cheerleaders. And I guess during one of the free practices, they had a bit of spare time. So they did like an analysis of his segment and how well he danced. Like they were doing like an analysis of an F1 battle or something. And they're like, the footwork, he's doing this and this and this. And look at how he turns and the apex of his turn. It was really funny. 10 out of 10. In qualifying, perhaps the most dramatic thing to happen is that Oscar's Q3 streak came to an end. This was the first time all season that he didn't make it into Q3, and he was the only one, which is crazy. Everyone kept joking that it's because he saw the video of the podium ceremony where you rise up on your car on like this, like you pop up on stage while you're like leaning against your car wearing a sombrero, and they were like, Oscar's like introverted self was like, nope, not today, and just like peace in Q1, which is my favorite theory. There was a great clip of a Ferrari mechanic tripping while he was ushering one of the cars out. He did like a backward somersault as he tripped, popped back up onto his feet and continued to usher the car out while he was smiling. And everyone's like, what a save. The riz on this man, I believe his name is Alessandro Ferraro. The riz on this Italian mechanic, loved it. He just recovered so well. Most importantly from the quali is that Carlos got pole. He had an incredible lap and secured P1 by 0.225 seconds ahead of Max. Incredible work. He also said in an interview that it's a bit bittersweet to be performing so well for a team that basically dumped him. And he was like, I'm basically setting them up to succeed next year and I won't be there to like benefit from it. And it makes him really sad. Like it's not often that a driver loses his seat for literally no reason, you know? Like he didn't lose it because he was underperforming. He didn't lose it because whatever. He just lost it because someone more marketable and exciting came along, and everyone understands what, even Carlos understands why they took Lewis. Like I don't think there's a single team on the grid that would be like, no, Lewis, sorry, we're not going to take you, except for maybe Red Bull. But it's still really sad, especially because Carlos is like at the height of his career. And the commentators were saying it's also a bit sad because like all these newbies are coming in and he's 30. So he's like right in the middle of his career. But by the time that like a seat opens up in on a better team, there'll be all these new drivers and new talent ready and able to compete. And so it's just a bit of a shame that the height of his career is being stripped away from him. But that's the way things goes. So the starting grid for the race is as follows: Carlos, Max, Lando, Charles, George, Lewis, Kevin, Gasly, Alex, Nico, Yuki, Lawson, Alonso, Stroll, Bottas, Colapinto, Oscar, and Checo. Oh, Ocon and Guan Yu. And Esteban Ocon will be starting from the pit lane because he had a battery change. All right, so the race. At the start, Max is in the lead. Oh, that's not what happened. So at the start, Carlos is in the lead. Max has an incredible start, just literally pops the fuck off at the start, and he takes the lead. Carlos is fighting Max, and then for some reason, like he went fully off track across the grass and ended up ahead, but obviously immediately had to get the spot back. And upon replay, we could see that Max did Max and pushed Carlos off. Basically, he didn't push him off, but like he defended as well as he should. And Carlos had no choice but to go off track, basically. Charles and Lando are quite close behind them, but Max is leading and Carlos is behind him. And then like shit hit the fan and basically Yuki crashed into the wall somewhere in the back and caused a safety car. So now no one can fight anyone, and the order is Max, Carlos, Lando, and Charles up at the front. And Alex Albon is also in the wall. And at first we're all like, what the fuck happened? Everyone immediately assumed it was Yuki. I don't know why we're all so quick to jump to the idea that it's Yuki's fault, but everyone assumed that. And you know what? It wasn't Yuki's fault. Basically what ended up happening is that Yuki was trying to overtake Alex very fairly. Like he was completely in the right with his overtake and he would have almost done it, but Alex was being squeezed by Pierre on the other side and Alex literally had nowhere to go. Ended up like tapping Yuki, who like slammed into the wall, and then that obviously took Alex out too. And Pierre just went on by. So basically it was Pierre's fault, and it's just really tragic that both Alex and Yuki's races were compromised in this way. Anyway, so they're out. We have a safety car. Everyone is driving behind the safety car. No one can overtake. There's not even space between them. So they're all trying to keep their tires heated. Other things that happened at the start: Lewis managed to get ahead of George. Stroll went up from P14 to P11. Checo made up 5 spots and is now in P13. But also, poor Checo is now being investigated for a false start. It was described incorrectly because technically his start wasn't false, but he was lined up incorrectly. So he ends up getting a penalty for that. But what was really funny is that when he was told by his engineer that he was being investigated for a false start, Checo goes, "Nope, the start was good. Nope, they're wrong." And like such a tone, it was hilarious. He did end up getting a penalty because he was like way misaligned in the box, but his confidence was highly amusing. Also, this was the first time they zoomed into Checo's dad, and this was the first time I think in my life that I've ever seen him not smile. I swear he's smiled like in every clip I've ever seen of him. But anyway, some information that the commentators shared. So in case you don't know much about safety cars, or it's all just like a vague thing to you, which honestly sometimes it feels like to me. But the difference between a virtual safety car and a regular safety car is that a virtual safety car just slows everyone down, but they can still be like spread out. Whereas a regular safety car is they're required to stay compact and exactly at the speed of the safety car, which allows for a more safe and thorough cleanup depending on the size of the mess. And then when we restart, Max ends up being sort of the de facto safety car because he has to basically keep everyone at the exact same pace that they're at, while to give the safety car enough time to get into the pit lane and safely away. One of the funniest moments during the whole safety car situation was Charles gets on the radio and says that whenever he zigzags, his water spills, and that he obviously needs to be able to drink his water even if he doesn't want to, which was a hilarious thing to add on. And the commentators were like, well, presumably you won't be zigzagging throughout the whole race, but I just like, it's kind of funny to imagine like all this water like blubbing up every time Charles went zigzagging. All right, so let's talk about some of the main battles that happened. So as soon as we restarted, we basically had a battle between Carlos and Max. Carlos was basically catching up after the race picks up like around lap 7, and Max bursted forward. Like he had a great restart, but Carlos was like, I don't think anyone was expecting the pace of of Carlos's car at the start, including Max, because Carlos was like right there, like all up in his grill, and then overtook him. And it was like such a fun overtake because Max was like fighting him back as Carlos is overtaking him, and there was like sort of wheel to wheel, and there was one point where Carlos sort of went off track almost, and like Max was like pretty feisty trying to keep his place, as he should be, but like in the end he was like no match. It was like actually insane. And it was such a fun battle. I literally didn't even see it coming. I was like lying down, and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God, Carlos is fighting Max. Carlos is beating Max. It was so fun. And then right after that, we went straight into like, I feel like everyone just forgot what just happened because immediately it was our two favorite like little bitches on track. Because Lando was right there. Like he took advantage of them slowing down that much. And, well, before that, Max actually got on the radio, and as Carlos is overtaking him, he goes, "What can I do with this fucking empty battery? What is this stupid mode?" So I think he like wasted a lot of battery power trying to keep position against Carlos. And of course their car sucks. Like his car was really, really slow, and it showed. So him being where he's at in general is very impressive considering the state of his car and the state of the cars he's battling. But then, yes, our two favorite little bitches are at it again. Lando tries to overtake Max, and then felt like Max ran him off the road, which he sort of did, but it was more in style with what Max usually does. Although I think Lando was ahead at the apex, so actually Max wouldn't have been able to get away with it anyway. And then immediately after they both went off track, Lando led for a second and Max took it back, and it was such an aggressive move. There's like, even the most die-hard Max fan can't be like, oh yeah, that's fine. Max fucked up. But it was like, it was so aggressive. It was very reminiscent of old Max. Like Max has way too much control of the car, and like everything they were saying last week is still true. So I don't know where this came from. But Max was terrible, and he gets a 10-second penalty. When GP tells him that he got the 10-second penalty, he goes, "Wow, that's impressive." And then GP goes, "Ugh, there was a lot of whinging, presumably talking about McLaren." And then, not long after that, Max got another 10-second penalty. So he got 20 seconds worth of penalty. The first one was for causing collision in turn 4, and the second one was for on turn 8, gaining an advantage when going off track. Turn 4 was kind of quintessential Max, like I said. The second one was just like incredibly reckless, and he's also so chill, unbothered about the fact that he got these penalties that it's almost like he knew he deserved them. I'm gonna go ahead and argue that he didn't deserve 20 seconds. I don't know why the FIA is making up for last time, or like because they heard how everyone was mad, so they gave him 20 seconds when these situations have previously each gotten like 5-second penalties. I don't think that he didn't actually end up causing a crash, so like I'm a little confused where this is coming from. But Max didn't like argue with it at all, which was a bit weird. And after the race, he was asked how he felt about them. He's like, well, it doesn't actually matter how I feel about them because I got them. So the penalties are there. And then he said, I was actually more bothered about my pace than I was about the penalties because I had no pace. So like, whatever. And then he said they asked him if he would do anything different next time about the penalties. And he's like, yeah, I would get a drink while I'm serving my penalties, because 20 seconds is a long time to just stand there. Like the engine's running, might as well do something useful. Like, Max, please. Like, zero shame, zero anything. And there was a theory on the F1 TV post-race thing that it was on purpose. And almost like he basically knew that Lando was going to get ahead of him. So he might as well do something, even with a 20-second penalty. Like it would slow Lando down enough to not catch up to the Ferraris, which would help him in the long run in the Drivers' Championship, which is low-key insane to do, but it also, like, it's the thing that makes the most sense to me. Like, it's not like Max to behave like that. Like, he always keeps it on the line. He doesn't really, and he's not acting like he made a mistake. He's acting like he knew exactly what happened. So, I don't know. It's a little suspicious. It's a little strange, but, for once, McLaren has no issues with how the FIA is handling things. They're like, the FIA is doing their job, blah, 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 blah. But like, again, something actually needs to be done about the penalties and like some sort of consistency. And they can't just like, I personally, while I think Max 100% deserved the penalties, obviously I'm not crazy. I think 20 seconds is a bit insane. I don't think he deserved 20 seconds worth of penalties. He should have gotten 10, 5 for each, the way everyone else got them last week. But it seems like they were just like giving him the penalties for last week as well. And also like, let's throw in some swearing penalties and like, why not? We've got him here while we're here. Why not? Yeah, the FIA needs to like really work on their consistency. Anyway, basically, at one point, Lando goes, and it wasn't the heat of the race, but he definitely meant it. He just went, this is a dangerous guy. This guy is dangerous. I honestly don't think he's dangerous. I honestly think he knew exactly what he was doing. Whether it's right or wrong, he knew what he was doing. Also, at one point, the commentators go, this is turning into a nightmare event for Red Bull. Most of it, no. In fact, all of it is self-inflicted. All right, a few other battles. There was a great battle between George and Lewis. There was like a mini one at the beginning in like lap 15 when George overtook Lewis in like a really pretty cool move. And then towards the end of the race, they spent like 15 laps battling. Lewis tried his darnest to overtake George, and George just would not let him. It took like 15 laps. Finally, in lap 66, with like 5 laps to go, Lewis finally manages to overtake George. George's car was like sparking. So I think the car was tired. And then there was Lando and Charles. And this is like where everything, like we were like, okay, the race is over basically. It's a Ferrari 1-2, Lando's in third, it's fine. And then Lando starts gaining on Charles. And apparently Charles kept getting told in the radio to save his like energy. And he didn't understand why. I heard none of this. They didn't like broadcast it. I was a little confused because I saw on Twitter that someone was saying this and I heard none of it. And apparently he was really pissed off about it. And apparently it was because Carlos was trying to get him to be slowed down so that he could win the race. And Ferrari was doing it, which seems a little strange. Of course, most of the people saying this were Charles fans. I saw like no one else like that's less biased saying anything of the sort. No one on TV, no one was saying anything about there being some sort of animosity happening. But anyway, lap 62, Lando is catching up to Charles to try and overtake. And Charles was struggling with his tires. Like, it wasn't like he was perfectly great and like they were just forcing him to be slow. He was struggling, and he was definitely struggling with his rear tires. He went super wide at one point and literally almost hit the barriers, which Lando just flew by in second. It was a really scary moment. He literally just like swerved and barely missed the barrier with like all the advertisements on it and just like went back. It just went and super glad he's safe, but like all I could think in the moment is like, did his water spill from the zigzag? And then the commentator said that Lando got an early Halloween present by ending up in P2. A Halloween present? That's like that's a weird way to put it. Anyway, so let's talk about Ferrari really quick. Just one funny radio from Carlos. When he finally got told to box like halfway through the race, he went, "Oh man, can I stay out longer?" And then went in anyway, but it was just really funny. It sounded like, "Oh man, Dad, can I play for like 5 more minutes?" And then there's like this like invisible battle between Charles and Carlos that everyone keeps mentioning. There were a couple of times in the radio where they played Carlos going. It was like right at the beginning, Carlos said Charles is taking the piss, honestly. And I had no idea what he was referring to, but I think what was happening is because Charles had just overtaken Lando and Max super quickly, and there was like this insane fight happening right behind him. He was trying to get away from it rather than necessarily trying to overtake Carlos, but Carlos felt like he was gaining on him for absolutely no reason, and that's when he got on the radio. So like I just dismissed that. And then like around lap 50-ish, Carlos said that in my opinion, we're pushing way too hard. We don't need this as a team, which apparently people took as like him being like, whoa guys, tell Charles to slow down. This is my win. And then Ferrari listened to him. I don't know. It was very weird. I thought he was talking about himself when he said we don't need to push this hard because he felt like he could still maintain the lead without going that aggressively. But maybe he was talking about Charles and I just didn't miss something entirely. But I'll get more to that at the end. A few other highlights from the race: Max fighting his way up from P15, which is where he ended up after serving the 25 seconds in the pit lane, 4 seconds for the pit stop and then 20 seconds for fucking up penalties. So that was very impressive that he was able to fight his way up from P15 to P6, I think. And then there was like this other fight going on. Liam and Checo were just like at it, like with each other. In lap 18, Checo tried to overtake Liam and they're literally like wheel to wheel, but they both go off track, but they almost made contact. And the commentator goes, if I were Liam Lawson, I'd be wearing a balaclava flying home today. Don't want to be spotted by the Mexico fans. And then Checo got on the radio and said, what the fuck is this idiot doing? Is he okay? And the commentator goes, yeah, I think he's fine. And then another time he went, is he fucking serious? That might have been Liam. And then there was another time when Liam overtook Checo and flipped him off as he's overtaking him, which is insane behavior from Liam Lawson. And around lap 69, Checo got told there might be some debris on turn 12. And he goes, I bet it's the same idiot as from before. And the engineer goes, you can watch the highlights later. And Checo goes, I'm watching the highlights now. Checo is not a fan of Liam. The commentators brought up that it might be a little bit of contention over the fact that Liam might be in line for the Red Bull seat, but like I don't think anyone thinks that Checo's staying, so I don't know why he'd be so grumpy at Liam. Also, Fernando retired his car during his 400th race in like lap 16. There was like a brake issue. It was so sad. Carlos's mother looks thrilled. She's like she was hugging Rebecca for the longest time. Carlos Sr. goes to hug Fred, but Carlos looks exhausted. His radio was so cute. His engineer's like, masterclass, Carlos. I don't know why we went Soviet. And Carlos goes, gracias, Mexico. This feels so good. Oh, it was so cute. Then he like got out of the car and was like full on hugging all the mechanics, checking the cars. They all like ran up to hug him. The commentator did say like he wasn't sure whether Carlos and Charles will be playing chess on this ride home. Which again, I'm so confused. Are we like in a fight? Are we fighting? Lando went to hug Carlos. Charles also came over to congratulate Carlos, but it was like a quick handshake. And then later, Carlos tried to talk to Charles, and Charles sort of like walked past him. And I don't know if it was just in the moment, like he had to go somewhere, or if I'm reading too much into it because I keep hearing about this drama that I didn't know was happening, or if Charles is actually pissed off. But he also didn't act pissed off in any of the interviews or anything. He like didn't mention anything about being upset about his race being ruined or being mad at Carlos for whatever reason. It's very strange. Also, Carlos is the first Spanish-speaking driver to win in Mexico. And he basically is like, the commentator was like, this isn't the Spanish-speaking driver they were hoping for, but they're thrilled with the Spanish-speaking driver they got. And like, you can like literally hear the cheers for Carlos. It was very sweet. This is what the soup looks like. This is what the soup looks like before the toppings. It looks like vomit, but it doesn't taste like vomit. So I'm adding some cabbage. I'm adding some radishes. I'm adding some avocado. Adding some tortilla chips. Oh, I'm supposed to add some sour cream, but I'll add that later. This is what it looks like. Let's see. Oh my god, it's so good. All right. So in the cool down room, it was so funny. First it was just Lando and Carlos sitting there, Lando and Charles sitting there, and they started replaying the fight between Max and Lando. And as like Max did that move, Lando like literally like looked over at Charles and was like giggling, and they zoomed in on Charles's face, and he literally was just cringing. He was like, like super quick. Both of them were trying to keep their composure. Not a single word was said. It was hilarious. And the rest of the cool down room was like what to be expected. Like Carlos came in, immediately started debriefing tire degradation and everything. Exactly what you'd expect. The podium was everything and more. He still like came up on the elevator thing with his car, but he was holding his helmet instead of wearing a sombrero, which I think was a good move. Didn't need to be wearing a sombrero. And it was so fun. Carlos's parents looked so happy. Rebecca looked so happy. Carlos looked so happy. In his interviews after, he was saying how like he had just decided that he wanted to win one more race with Ferrari before the year was over, and he just decided that Mexico was a good place to do it, and then he just did it. And I just love when Carlos puts his mind to something because he always follows through, and it's always like at the beginning when he just decided he wanted to prove everyone wrong about why Ferrari getting rid of him, and then he just won. When he won after his appendix, like. All right, so the results, driver of the day is officially Carlos Sainz, and unofficially for me, also Carlos Sainz. I don't know like what's going on, if anything's going on with him and Charles, but he had an epic race, an insane weekend. The whole weekend he was just on point. Like he's determined, he decided he was gonna win, and he won, and I love that. I'm so impressed by him. And it's just like, once again, such an emotional race. Last time he won after his, like a week after his appendix, and like I sobbed. This time he won as like sort of like a farewell to Ferrari, and like being like, everyone remember that I can win, because I know he's going to a team where he won't be able to win, and it just makes me really sad because everyone keeps saying Carlos deserves better. But there was also like a lot of great drives. There's a bunch of honorable mentions. Charles, obviously, both of Mercedes, even Max, despite his move, which I still think was intentional, fighting his way back up. Very impressed. Lando, everyone drove really well. Lando actually, I think, most improved this week because he finally learned what to do against Max and followed through, and good for him. Dick in the box. I kind of think the whole race was super chaotic and there were so many battles. Dick in the box, I think like the whole race was kind of chaotic. There were a bunch of battles happening and everyone was like in a bad mood. There's a lot of like petty inner fighting, and I feel like no one was actually happy besides Carlos today. Charles was annoyed about his strategy compared to Carlos's. Franco had car issues. Yuki and Alex DNF through no fault of their own. Literally, Pierre's like just a little menace. Max got a 20-second penalty. Checo got a penalty and then just drove terribly and is just mad at Liam for no reason. Oscar is just generally annoyed at everything. He literally at one point on his radio was like, can you just get me out of this mess? I don't know what was supposed to happen. He was like, just get me out of here. George was annoyed by his strategy at one point when he managed to overtake Oscar and now had to overtake Liam after his pit stop. He was just like, why did we do this? Like, I feel like we could have stayed out for one or two more laps. Which is fair because like he wasted so much time trying to overtake people for no reason. My point is, no one I think was particularly innocent today, but no one was actually really guilty either. It was just like a weird hodgepodge of like heightened emotion. So the results of the race are Carlos, Lando, Charles, Lewis, George, Max, Kevin, Oscar, Nico, Pierre, Lance, Franco, Esteban, Valtteri, Guan Yu, Liam, Checo, and then Fernando, Alex, and Yuki DNF'd. The standings are as follows. Max with 362 points, Lando with 315, Charles with 291, Oscar with 251, Carlos with 240, Lewis with 189, George with 177, Checo with 150, Alonso with 62, and Nico with 31. Lando is catching up. If every race for the rest of the season is like this one, there's a strong chance that Lando might at least tie with Max. In the Constructors' Championship, we have McLaren with 566, Ferrari with 537, so they're super close. Red Bull with 512, Mercedes with 36. What? Aston Martin with 86, Haas with 46, RB with 36. No, I definitely got something wrong about Mercedes. Mercedes is not 36. Mercedes is 366. Whoops. Williams is 17, Alpine is 14, and Kick Sauber is 0. All right, so that's it for the Mexico Grand Prix. Thank you for making this soup with me. It's very good. I'm very proud of myself. And what a race. Like, just every time we have something new and exciting to look forward to, and you never know what it's going to be. So can't wait for Brazil. Can't wait to see what happens. It's just in a few days' time. So in the meantime, make sure you follow at BoxBoxF1Pod to keep up in between races on social media. And as always, you can reach out to me, DM me with any thoughts, questions, or anything I might have missed. And make sure you subscribe, review, and share with other potential boxes. See you soon. Box.